Thank you all for tuning in. Exploring reverse or mirrored Maya hieroglyphs with yours truly, Jim Reed, and I'm an independent researcher and creator editor of the Aztlander. So tonight we'll be exploring reverse mirrored Maya hieroglyphs. And I got a lot of people to thank here. You can read them there yourself, and they'll appear on various slides as I'm going through it. And I have to add, didn't have time to add Phil Wanyurka, but last night at 3 in the morning, I put in a new slide of information he sent me that you'll see. And then at 6 o'clock tonight, I added a second slide. So you'll see Phil's work coming up. We form our identities through our memories and our perceptions. And perceptions is really important because that's a lot of what we'll be dealing with. And at least with the Maya and the carvings that you'll see uh, in stone or on lintels or on polychrome ceramics, it's a lot of interpretation. Uh, and it's the perception of what and who's perceiving it. It isn't always, well, as we'll find out, is sometimes the entities, the so-called gods that they're appealing to, and we'll see as we get into it. But the Bostrophidan style is a style of writing in which alternate lines of writing are reversed, with letters also written in reverse, mirror style. This is in contrast to modern European languages where lines always begin on the same side, usually the left. The Atlantean language created by Marc Okrand for Disney 2000 film Atlantis, The Lost Empire, is written in Bostrophidan to recreate the feeling of flowing water. And in later writers, J.R.R. Tolkien states that many elves were ambidextrous and as such could write left to right or right to left as needed. And here we find an example of this in the Codex Borgia on page 14. The Lords of the Night are a set of 9 deities who ruled over every 9th night, forming a calendric cycle. And each lord was associated with a particular fortune, bad or good, that was an omen for the night they ruled over. And as you see, one thing we'll be looking for as we look at Maya glyphs is look how this first row, they're all facing to the left. That's like normal Maya reading, as we'll see. And here in this column, they're all facing to the right, and then they return all facing to the left. So that'll be one of the easier ways we're able to discern reverse Maya glyphs is when they are facing the wrong direction, as you'll see here. So our reading order starts at the bottom and then comes up, goes across, and goes across. The actual reading order begins at the bottom right. So 3C, 3B, 3A, 2A, these are read in order, 2A, 2B, 2C, and then it's 1C, 1B, 1A. So this is a pointing out how these lines have deities facing in reverse. And I also found this, and I thought this was interesting. This is from the Rongo Rongo script, Rapa Nui, and it's a system of glyphs discovered in the 19th century on Easter Island that has the appearance of proto-writing. But not only, but look here, not only are corresponding glyphs, like these two white circles are corresponding. It's facing to the right here, but here it's upside down facing to the left. And if we look at the two circles, the glyphs are also not only reversed, but upside down. Here in these two squares, this little animal is upside down and reversed. And between the two squares, we'll say that this little batty owl looking dude is also upside down and reversed. So this is an example of reverse Brostopheden. And mirror writing is formed by writing in the direction that is the reverse of the natural way for a given language, such as the result is the mirror image of normal writing. It appears normal when it is reflected in a mirror. And we're all familiar with this. If you've ever had an ambulance follow you, uh, you'll see it the right way around in the rear view mirror. And the ability to write mirrored Myra text. I didn't see if Susan Hoffman's here tonight, but she emailed me and said, "Hey, Jim, I can write in reverse pretty easily." And if so, I told her uh, that an Australian newspaper experiment identified 10 true mirror writings in a readership of 65,000. A higher proportion of left-handed people are better mirror writers than right-handed people, perhaps because it is more natural for a left-hander to write from right to left. 15% of left-handed people have the language centers in both halves of their brain, and the cerebral cortex and motor that are affected by this, causing the person to be able to read and write backwards quite naturally. Um, a department of neurosurgery in Japan also observed that normal children exhibited signs of mirror writing while learning to write, thus concluding that currently there is no exact method for finding the true origin of mirrored writing. But Leonardo had his mirrored writing down pat because in his notes, they are in mirror writing. Leonardo da Vinci wrote most of his personal notes in mirror, using the standard writing if he intended his text to be read by others. The purpose of this remains unknown, though several possible reasons have been suggested because, for example, writing left-handed from left to right would have been messy because the ink just put down would smear as his hands moved across it. Writing in reverse would prevent such smudging. An alternative theory is that the process of rotating the linguistic object in memory before sending it to paper and rotating it before reading it back is a method of reinforcement learning. So, from this theory, it follows that the use of bostrofodonic writing, especially in public instances, as in a lot of the Maya cases, may be to render better recall of the text to the reader. So here we have some comments from Mark Van Stone, and I asked him, "Can you tell me anything about reverse Maya glyphs?" And Mark said, "I suspect they were left-handed or for some religious reason. The way to test this would be to see if known scribes, like the guy who carved the text on Riaschilan Lentil 25, ever carved anything else that was orthograde. You know how Egyptian scribes wrote both ways? They had faces, or fingers, say, that always face the reader when she reads it, the same as Hittite and Hebrew. But in Egyptians, the scribe showed respect for the pharaoh and the gods by turning the text backwards forwards so the faces of the hieroglyphs would face the honored person." And this is a conversation I had with Mark during Elaine Shealy's Aztlander program in November of 2025. So Bruce Lev, his parent codex, he had a few things to say in the intro about my gods. What would I write differently today? In the first place, the title. To call the Maya date keepers priests is to mimic the Spanish missionaries sacerdote. And my growing awareness of the indigenous perspective over the last 30 years, my sincere efforts to develop Native Mesoamerican friendships, my willingness to be teachable, leads me to reject the term priest for what today would be called spiritual guides. Likewise, the term God is eschewed by many Maya colleagues. Maize gods and ray gods are not the gods so much as they are protectors and guardians and spirit companions, embodiments of natural and supernatural forces. Perhaps deities is closer to the mark. And I totally agree with Bruce. And where it all started with me is twice back, maybe in the 80s, later 80s, early 90s. Excuse me, I went to Chichen Itza in the area of Old Chichen or Old Chichen, and there is this lintel supported by a couple Atlantean figures. Look a little Toltec to me. Uh, and the remains of an ancient doorway to a large room atop a structure. And I was visiting this site the one time as a guest of Maruja Barachano of the Mayaland Hotel. The whole family were friends of mine. Uh, and she invited me and Shushila Oliphant down, and we took a horseback trip. And our Maya guide told me that the glyphs on the front side were in reverse. So that piqued my interest, and I've always been interested in that. But then Bruce, did one or two previous programs for us, and he has a little paper booklet about all of the glyphs in the Old Chichen, and he has an illustration of that, the front of that stone lintel, and and you can see that there's nothing in reverse. Nothing, none of the date numerals or numeration is on the left-hand side. There's no face glyphs facing the wrong way. And Bruce said, no, there are no reverse glyphs in the corpus of lintels at Chichen Itza, which was a major bummer for me. And the recent photo shows the lintel removed, and that's because they put it in uh, one of the new museums there at around the entrance of Chichen. But according to Carl Callaway and Peter Biro, and Peter will be giving his own presentation also next year, I found that there actually is an example of reverse text in Old Chichen. And that has to do with this area of the Caracol Observatory building, as we'll see next. And I got this from a paper by Peter Biro about the Caracol disc. We'll be talking about the Caracol panel. They're both right there. Uh, and this is from Tatiana Proskuryakov, looking from uh, the Caracol Tower as seen from the Casa Colorada, aquí. And this is from Carl Callaway's thesis, and it shows all the astronomical alignments that were visible from the Caracol. And here we have this little niche where the panel and the sort of like stela, standing stone, are. They're in this niche, so there would have been alignments, especially to the zenith passage, right over them. Excuse me. And here it is, a lot bigger. And many discovered Maya stylobate niches, such as the one found in the Caracol at Chichen Itza, were mathematically aligned with extreme precision to track celestial events, such as the setting points of Sun and Venus. And first, not that there's any reverse glyphs here, but there is a reverse statement on the Caracol disc that Peter Biro points out, and probably Carl also. But this is a daytime event, and this is a nighttime ceremony going on. This is a scattering event, conjuring the vision serpent. And that's one thing I'll also point out is a lot of these characters are God impersonators, it's sometimes called. So when we're dealing with the gods, we're dealing with other realms. And here's the Caracol panel found by Morley in 23, along with the disc. Um, and its front perimeter edge was carved in the form of a serpent. So we're not looking at the edge yet, but around, you can see part of the serpent's tail here is apparently a rattlesnake, and it comes around. Uh, the text with its belly possibly facing inward toward the main inscription. So its inscription is reverse on the lateral sides. Uh, the erudite, which I guess Carl intends to speak about next year, it's in an atypical format, and this is written in reversed order or mirrored. And Carl says all the text on the lateral side seems to be written in reverse, since glyphs with face profiles are facing to the right. Yet I can only read the text with the erudite reference. And this is the way they would show, I mean, this is the way it appears. And this is the way they show epigraphers. So the face glyphs are facing to the left. And we'll encounter this on other instances where for the epigraphers, they'll flip the image completely so they can read it. And they don't always publish it that way. They'll publish it this way so that it can be read. But the way it really is on the serpent's belly is reverse. And you can see some head variants here facing to the left. Calendar notations are on the right. So that's the kind of thing we'll be looking for. Thank you, Carl. And what I used as my background behind me is the Fort Worth panel. And it's a presentation of captives to a Maya ruler from 783 CE. It's in the Kimball Art Museum. And the throne text the ruler sits on is in reverse. Here you can see the little parrot head facing to the right. And this was in a conversation, personal communication that my satellite disk picked up on between Mark Van Stone and Carl back in 2021. And this I've just added, excuse me, because it's such a nice rendering of a whole photo of the whole thing. And this is actually a presentation of spondylus shells, which truly interests me, at the arraignment of the captives. And it's a palace scene with captives and individual holding a spondylus shell. It appears right here. This is from Justin Kerr. The collection is now moved from, let's see, Ramsey to Lackmore to Dumbarton Oaks. And during the classic period, such shells has served as highly valued currency, perhaps even worth their value in terms of a captive slave. I thought that was so interesting. And a lot of what you'll see in my presentation tonight are things that I found interesting that I hope interest you or you've never seen also. And then Carl submitted a couple times images of this pillar that is now in a museum, the Soledad Museum in Campeche. It's from Bacna and Campeche. And you'll notice that the ruler sits on a tasseled throne. And it turns out that those glyphs are in reverse. They are little head glyphs facing to the right. And there's a lot going on here. It's a Maya ruler with a tasseled jade skirt going on here, with a cajun, consejero, in this case, an axe-wielding war chief over here. And this guy, is that who they think is a dwarf? Yeah. And he could be a war prisoner. And the text right here, as I pointed out, is in reverse. So this one is even more a mystery. Why was the whole scene meant to be seen reflected in a mirror so the text could be read correctly? Or are we looking into another realm? It looks like a normal court scene with music, a jester, and a swinging act. Is that you, Michael? And then probably our earliest one, and John Justison promised to review. Is everybody muted? Michael, are you muted?
Everybody's muted. I don't know where that's coming from.
Hmm. Well, this is La Morada Stela 1. It's a basalt stela bearing a very long text. Can you hear me now? Like I said,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
I'll keep
Yeah,
going.
I can hear you now, Jim.
Already, uh, the La Mojada Stela 1 is a basalt stela bearing a very long text. The village and adjacent mounds lie approximately midway between the archaeological sites of Cerro de las Mesas and Tres Zapotes. And the initial series date of this stela goes way back to 143 CE. So this is our earliest example of reverse glyphs. And here we have an illustration by George Stewart that was posted by Terence Kaufman. I've, of course, spelled his name wrong here. Excuse me. There are many examples where the signs are mirrored and the spatial orientation of associated with a figure of high status. So this is an old pattern Mesoamerican art. We can see this on this Stela 1 from La Mojada, where the text immediately above the figure right here is read normally, but what's facing him uh, is in the default, while the text he faces has default left to right, so he can read it. So this is read this way so that this guy can read it. And this, I would probably guess, he's impersonating some god. But our most classic example of reverse text, in fact, everything you're looking at here, the image, everything is reverse. You can see our little face glyphs here facing to the right. And I'll be calling out this fish and hand glyph because that's sometimes they didn't reverse it. So this is a bunch of text describing it. And the photo is from Ian Graham. And what we see, everything is actually in reverse. But what they share with epigraphers is the opposite view. And this is interesting because this is what the entities or so would see that entered the doorway there in the structure 23 at Yaxchilan would see. And we'll find this also. I've got later on, I've got an illustration by Linda Shealy. And at the bottom, there's a little note that says, this side up. It's like, hey, is that a clue? So Carl was nice enough to even provide these indications of the portrait glyphs are facing to the right. And the text is indicated as backward or in mirrored text. Thank you, Carl. And once again, notice the fish in hand. And here we have it. This is a more detailed view of the of what epigraphers would use. Um, and here we have the fishing hand glyph as if being held in a right hand. And all our heads are head variants are all facing to the left. So concerning the fishing hand glyph, and this is probably the best study there is out there. Mallory Matsumoto of the University of Oxford, she wrote this paper, Reflection as Transformation. Mirrored image structure on Maya monumental texts is a visual metaphor for ritual participation. So A is how this fishing hand glyph appears on the other side of lintel 20. Note that it has not been mirrored along with the rest of the text in which it occurs. The mirrored form would probably look like this, B, which Graham and Von Yoel include in their drawing that reorients the mirrored text on the monument's underside in the standard left to right reading order. And then they might not have reversed it because it could have a different meaning, as if you had this fish in your left or right hand. It might have changed reading, but we'll find other glyphs that didn't change meaning no matter which way you face them. So another example is Cybele Stela 10 and 11, and these are called the twin stela. They're the most famous mirror image monuments in the Maya era, erected in 849 CE. They were commissioned by Watul Katel, a foreign ruler who installed himself at the site during the Thermal Classic period. And this is the front of Stela 10. This is the front of Stela 11. And here we have illustrations by Ian Graham. And they were placed facing each other across the little plaza. And on Stela 10, the glyph columns are laid out in the right to left reading order, with the glyphs themselves facing inward towards the center of the monument. So here we can find a few face glyphs. They're all facing to the left. That seems normal. On Stela 11, the text mirrors this arrangement. That together they create a spectacular pair. The texts reflect one another across the space between them. And we'll be seeing a lot more from Ian Graham a little later on. So another example, these are very eroded, but this is Washaktun Stela 6. It's one of 11 known Maya monuments whose hieroglyphic texts are carved in mirror image. And again, this is from Mallory Matsumoto, and she, in her paper, she lists out all these 11. But you can see over here our face glyphs, our date notations are all facing to the right. The mirror image glyphs are not errors or works of unskilled carvers. They constitute a conscious formal choice by the Maya scribes and sculptors. Mirrors, there's a connection to mirrors, although I don't think the royals walked around with their dwarfs holding their mirrors so they could look at carved sculpture or lintels in reverse. Still, the Maya used mirrors, typically polished pyrite or hematite, and they were powerful symbols of political and religious authority. They were associated with portals. We'll describe, we'll find another example of mention of portals, divination, and supernatural communication, objects that allowed kings to see into and interact with the spiritual world. The reverse glyphs visually evoke the act of looking into a reflective surface. By carving the inscription as though it were being seen in a mirror, the monument extends ritual participation to the viewer, Matsumoto argues that the specular form of these inscriptions extended the ritual participation of the Maya spectator, placing them in contact with the supernatural. The reader-viewer effectively stands in the position of the deity or spirit looking back through the mirrored surface. A lot of important stuff there. Now, thanks to Phil Wanderka, who's with us tonight, he sent me this information over the past. Once he saw my program announcement, he was like, "Hey, Jim, did you know that Nimlit Punit Stela 15 has some reverse glyphs? And that the reverse section of text is located below the figural screen. And you can find that in his report, his final report on the inscriptions of Southern Belize on the FAMSI website. But I had such a problem with FAMSI last night, and it looks like there's just not all the stuff that used to be there is not there. And I know Linda Shealy's drawing collection is there. I access it all the time. They've been making higher res images of Linda's drawings. And in one of Phil's reports, I found a rubbing by Mulgreen Robertson, but the one that Phil is referencing is just not available on FAMSI. If you download the PDF, it's download the PDF. It's just a TOC and intro. So that's a sad state of affairs. But this image was by Norman Hammond from 1976. But late today, Phil sent me this image, which is the John Montgomery one that I was looking for on FAMSI. And Phil says that these glyphs, which are right here, they're in reverse or read backwards. So that, and look how the notation is backwards. So you have E1, F1, G, H, I1, J1, and 2. So thank you, Phil, for that. Here we have a bunch of comments from Marc Zender. There are many examples where the signs mirror the spatial orientation of associated figure of high status. The famous example is Lashchelan Lintel 25, where the main text and even the captions share the orientation of the conjured warrior ancestor, the deity, rather than that of the nearby Lady Kabal Shuk. This is an old pattern in Mesoamerican writing and art, and we can see something similar on La Mojada Stela 1, which is why I showed it to you. Most of the examples of mirrored text fits one or sometimes both of the rationales above, but there are a few examples whose motivations are less certain, such as the occasional mirrored text on ceramics with associated imagery where they have mere scribal whim, a southpaw scribe, or the mirrored text above the constellations of the Paris Codex, a mere scribal whim, or perhaps to mirror the apparent movements of the constellations across the heaven from east to west, as if when one is facing north. Anyway, Mark thinks it's a great topic, especially when stripped of the mysticism that has sometimes surrounded the topic of mirrored text in the literature. Thank you, Mark. And so let's explore the Paris Codex that he mentioned. Blah, 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 too much text here. If you want to read it, stop the recording. But some of the astronomical signs that are featured show a scorpion and a peccary. And we'll find out that the peccary was also very important in different ways with the ancient Maya. So here we have the reverse of the codex is more varied in nature and includes a section dedicated to calendrical cycle ruled by Chak. It also includes information in the prognostication of rainfall and maize crop yields. as well as information about spiritual forces. A set of 2 pages illustrates the days of the Zoltzkin and correspond to the beginning of the solar year or over a period of 52 years. And the final 2 pages of the Codex depict a series of 13 animals that represent the so-called uh, zodiac. And Bruce Love notes that although there are 13 constellations featured, they are all over the sky and not just in the zodiacal band that we recognize and we get our 12 constellations from. But Carl Callaway says, notice how the coup sign, which is a portrait skiff, is facing to the right. And that means it's in reverse. And this is the sky band, the ecliptic, the double-headed serpent ecliptic that so many of the royals portray themselves holding, like 18 Rabbit at Copan. And Bruce Love says the glyphs on page 21 through 24 all face to the right, except the day signs inside the day sign columns. So here, once again, the glyphs on the top panel of the constellation panels are mirrored. Or, Marc says, are they a mere scribal whim, or perhaps to mirror the apparent movements of the constellations across the heavens, which is very, very interesting. And here are the constellations pictured here. Here's another band of them here. And the constellations are along the ecliptic, which is here, reverse glyphs in the heavens, or what we could consider the underworld. And now we come to, this is one that we'll see doesn't record reverse Maya hieroglyphs, but it was interesting because it does show up when you're doing research. So this is Ishkalukin miscellaneous number 5. It's a circles text circle around a couple doorways here. And this is from Talbot Mahler in 1887. This is again it's been reconstructed now. The south face of the east doorway is in the medial wall of the middle building of the hieroglyphic group. At some time in the 1960s, the door was dismantled in order to remove the carved stones for safekeeping. They were stored first at the Temple of San Juan de Dios in Mérida, and later transferred to the Museo Arqueológico in Mérida. One stone which carried glyph block A up here, and the numerical coefficient of B, which would have been here, was lost. So except for a few losses at the edges, all the stones are in excellent state. When found, however, they were not in the original order, plainly have been reset in antiquity. The block carrying glyph I was missing, glyph block J was inverted, and 5 glyphs in the column flanking the right-hand side of the doorway were jumbled. So that's why it shows up in a search. Here we have an illustration by Ian Graham. It might have also shown up because sometimes the glyphs, paired glyphs, will face the other direction. So this whole thing might have shown up because of this guy over here facing to the right. But it shows it's an interesting case when it comes to glyph orientation, but is not considered a clear example of true reverse or mirrored Maya glyphs. Door lintels and jambs like this one often force scribes to fit glyphs into tight or awkward spaces, adjust proportions or orientation slightly, and this can mimic reversal. So even though it is not reverse glyphs, it is important because it shows how Maya scribes adapted writing to architecture, that the glyph layout was not always rigid, and why modern viewers, like me, sometimes misidentify the pseudo or reverse forms. So Carl Callaway, in an email with him, he goes, "Dear Jim, Eshkalu Gain has no reverse or perverse reverse text. which Don Carl with a K is an awful perverted way to put it, but it does explain why sometimes reverse glyphs are hard to interpret. Another example is the Kirigwa Stella H. And Stella H and Copan J, as we'll see in the next slide, both use an unusual diagonal interwoven mat of Maya glyphs rather than the normal paired vertical columns. This Stella H at Kirigwa is explicitly described as imitating Stella J. And then look over here at the glyph order. Rather than reading down, ding, 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 in different columns, we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Over here, 6, 7, 8, 9. Jump back over here, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So it's a very unusual pattern. And here it gets more unusual because these are intertwined glyphs. And again, the scribes are forced to fit glyphs in weird positions. Look how things get cut off. You'd think they would have made it a little bit wider. But you can see why this is a crucial comparison. And this is nicely done in 96 by Linda Sheely. The glyph box aren't simply placed in diagonal rows, but the text forms a crisscross interwoven mat. So I thought this is from Susan Hoffman. And I mentioned that Susan Hoffman mentioned to me that she could easily write in reverse. And she says, in light of your presentation of reverse glyphs, I thought back to the first group trip I did led by Linda Sheely in 1994. One of our first stops was Copan, and she reviewed with us an unusual glyph pattern of Stella J. The glyphs are written in diagonal strips, and I tried to define the order they were meant to be read. Look at all these numbers. It's not easy to follow. And although I tried to take notes while she spoke and showed us the pattern, I didn't catch everything. So she outlined the initial series glyph in blue here. And granted, this arrangement of glyphs is not the same as reverse glyphs, but the idea of laying out the message in an unconventional pattern is sort of kind of similar. So thank you, Susan. Now let's mention about peccaries in the Maya worldview. Peccaries appear in Maya art in a number of different contexts. While not the most frequent subject in any media, they show in naturalistic, abstract, and anthropomorphized forms, frequently in ritual situations, ritual, and clearly were considered an important part of the Maya worldview. Animal species used for way creatures were broken down into subcategories based on their variations and attributes. The jaguar was a way creature commonly associated with kings and had roughly 15 different aspects, including the water, fire, and cloud jaguar, each with different attributes. A peccary with volutes emerging from his nostrils and wearing a death's eye collar or scarf around the neck appears in a number of vessels and identified as a fire peccary. So where this shows up, one of the instances is in David Friedel, part of this Maya Cosmos book by Linda and David and Joy Parker. And David says the inside size scene shows the dedication of a stela right here, but the point of view represented is from the other side of the portal. It is as if the gods and the ancestors were looking at humanity from the other world. Some of the animals cavorting around in this scene are peccaries. And he checked the equate position of the Milky Way and found that it has the peccaries of Gemini above its northeastern horizon, and the scorpion of Scorbus peeking out of its top southwestern horizon, he compared this sky pattern to the drawing on the skull from Copan and found that, to his delight, that the peccaries were sitting on its northeastern side just as they do in the sky on this night. The greatest of the classic Maya portals to the underworld is also found in the night sky. So as we found on the caracal disc, they were portraying a nighttime event, ritual, and a daytime. So the nighttime skies being associated with the underworld shows up in a lot. By acknowledging the varied representations and uses of peccaries, uh, they were more than just a food source to the ancient Maya. They were one of the many animals whose flesh, bones, and likenesses were utilized for functional and ritual purposes. The animals may have been immune with symbolic connotations applicable to common themes in Maya iconography, elite agency, rebirth, and the interconnectedness of the natural and supernatural worlds. Human actors access the underworld and its power through ceremony. So thank you, David, for that. So now let's move on to a bench scene, Kopal Temple 11, the bench and panels. And this particular part of this structure shows up because all of these guys are facing to the right. I mean, it's just symmetry, and it doesn't have to do with reverse glyphs here. But inside the structure, structure 11, you'll see that the Yashpashat, the 16th and last ruler of Kapan, designed the ground floor of this temple with a wide east to west gallery crossed by a smaller north-south corridor. In this way, he engineered an entrance to the building from each of the four cardinal directions, north, east, south, and west. And just inside of these four doors, panels facing one another record historical events important to Yashpashach, political strategy, and the dedication of the temple itself. But what we find is this is the north-south corridor. That's the entrance right there. Represents the skeletal mall of the other world. Just inside each entrance, panels record historical events and the dedication of the temple itself. But furthermore, each pair of texts is designed to be read from a different direction, starting with the north door to read them in proper order, that is, outside the bank doors. The reader would have to circulate through all four directions. And this attention is to the point of view of the gods is not unusual in Maya art. What is curious about, and here we have it, each pair of texts is that one is in normal reading order, while the other facing text reads in the reverse order, as if you were seeing it in a mirror. It is as if you were standing between the glass entry doors of a bank. The writing of the door in front of you would read normally, while the writing behind you would be reversed. If you were standing outside, however, the text on both doors would read in the proper order. In Temple 11, of course, the walls are not transparent, but this made no difference since the audience addressed by these texts consisted of the ancestors and the gods, and apparently they could read through solid walls. So thank you, David and Linda. And I once again was in conversation with Marc Zender, and I asked him about this, and he goes, "Do you mean my texts that have been reorientated to read right to left instead of the default left to right?" And so, yes, I'm familiar. We usually call them mirrored texts. The best, clearest examples of those whose rationale is spatial architectural, such as Copan Temple 11 doorway panel, One reads the text mounted on the ends of the temple's hallways and from just outside the door. So those on the left side of the viewer are read in the usual fashion, with all the sign facing the reader, while those on the right side, again, of the viewer are mirrored, such the signs again face the reader viewer and are instead read from right to left. Thank you, Mark. So now let's go in search of site R and its three lintels. And I asked Elaine Shealy early on, I go, do you know which Maya site is site R? And this is where Elaine introduced me to AR. And she goes, sorry, I do not know the answer to your question about site R. And she asked ChatGPT, and this is the reply. Site R is generally associated with La Pasadita, a small lake classic Maya site in northwestern Guatemala near Yaxchilan on the Usumacinta River. However, there's some ambiguity. Some scholars still refer to Site R as an unknown or not fully secure satellite site of Yaxchilan, while others identify it parenthetically as Site R. Hey, it's La Pasadita, which is what I believe. So recent scholarship explicitly refers to La Pasadita and discusses the lintels there, 1, 2, and 3, in connection with Tulum, the local leader under Yaxchilan's bird jaguar, the fourth. And I created this map just to show where La Pasadita is. And here we have Piedras Negras, the Usumacinta River, and Yaxchilan on the Horseshoe Bend in the protective area of the river. And then this I thought was interesting. This is a sort of a rendition of the LiDAR and elevation map. And the areas in yellow show you which parts of the structure mounds, the raised elevated lands that the structures were on would have been visible from Yaxchilan. But the lintels are really something special. And this one is in the Berlin Museum. The photo is by Claudia Orocki, and they're designated this as lintel 1. And lintel 1 does not contain any reverse glyphs, but we're going to be looking for one that does. And here's a nice illustration by Ian Graham. And James Doyle, he'll be giving a program next month for the IMS. But we have a La Pasadita lintel 1 depicting bird jaguar the fourth and the Sahal Tulum. And this guy is apparently mentioned on 3 of the lintels. Here's a drawing from Linda Shealy of lintel 2 from La Pasadita. This one's in the Lyda Museum. You can see some of the face glyphs are painted to the right. But at the bottom, you'll see Linda wrote a little note, this side up. So I'm wondering if that's a clue. Could it be the drawing of lintel 2 depicting, could it be, because we're looking for juxtaposed mirrored or unmirrored images. But yeah, her signature is actually in reverse. So here we have a nice thing. This is from lintel number 3, depicting La Pasadita, ruler, shield jaguar again, and the Sahal Tulum. But look how Stephanie, where's her name? Stephanie look how her name is in reverse on this previous slide, because that's the way it appears when the epigraphers are using it. So that even though there is a mixture here of face glyphs facing to the right or to the left, but when we turn it the right way, the artist is revealed, Stephanie Tufel. Could this one be the one we're looking for? So we've got all of our face facing to the right. And I believe so. This is the one we're looking for. Uh, Researchers emphasize that the mirrored section is not a random scribal error, that the reversal appears intentional and symbolic, likely connected to the themes of ritual transformation, ascension, or altered cosmic state. The study specifically notes that the unreversed conclusion of lintel 3 consists primarily of Yeshua fourth title, contrasting with the mirrored rendering of his name glyphs. So there we found it. And here's a detail of those glyphs. But this is from James Doyle and the Met Museum, and it's this beautiful, beautiful lintel. We'll call this one lintel 4. It's in the Met Museum. It's very well known. And in conversation with James, he was like, I'm not sure that anybody's given them a definite numerical order, but I'm showing you this just because here the scribes, the guy who carved this, his name is revealed. Is this the right text? It's striking for the amount of pigment preserved on the surface. And again, it's the same jaguar balloon, yeah, the fourth. And also the Sahal, the Tulum guy we've been seeing, is featured here, and his name glyphs. And this is a detail more of the where the sculptor's signature. So now we know the sculptor, Chacalte. Uh, he's probably a sculptor who worked under the patronage of Shield Jaguar IV, and that leader was known to send out sculptures to the other provisional lords, like La Pasarita, and they were sometimes important members of the royal courts. So this I thought was interesting. Once I was exploring ChatGPT for the La Pasadita murals, and this guy, Kash Kultura, I don't know if you've seen any of his work, but he uses AI to recreate Maya scenes, especially a lot of the Justin Kerr's rollout photography. And this is what he came up with. So I thought that was just something that's interesting. And then let's discover a little more. I don't know if you know so much about Ian Graham here, but he went around La Pasadita in the 70s and he recorded many images using Kodachrome film of the lintels and their removal. These transparencies are preserved in the Peabody Museum of Hardware, and the image captions are reproduced from those archives. So here we're seeing a sawed version of one of the lintels. Here we're seeing other photos of where the panels that we saw that are nicely carved, they ripped them down and sawed the depth of them, not the width or length, but they sawed the depth so they wouldn't be so heavy. And they just left the carcasses strewn around. And we have evidence of this from Ian Graham's photographs. And here we have a photo of the couple of guys that actually did the sawing and removed the lintels. And here's Ian with they're calling a mecopal. That's this little head carrying device. And then, did you ever know there were murals at La Pasadita? I never did. And these are some of Ian's photos of murals, an area of the wall painting. This is a frescoed wall of the southern chamber, a dividing wall of like two different rooms of this corbelled art structure. Here's a little close-up of the mural on the east wall. And here's Martin Fetweiss tracing the murals. And then Ian removed a lot of the a lot of the murals to transfer it to the National Museum. And here he's excuse me, he's spraying part of the mural before he moved it. And this is a piece that he removed that appears in the museum there in Guatemala City. I mean, how many people have seen this? Ian recording himself damaging murals and pieces of art. Amazing. But this is just a compiled list of all of the different stela that occur at various sites where the flanking glyphs, the glyphs that are on the side, they are sometimes show systematic mirroring, where the glyphs facing inward towards the central portrait. This is one of the most consistent and well-documented examples of compositional mirroring in the Maya world. The hieroglyphic stairway already has also exhibits some mirrored glyphs, but it's you can't always be sure of that. But Copan, as well as Quiriguá, shows especially the amorphous in Quiriguá. The complex wraparound texts on these big boulders include glyphs adjusted in their orientation to follow the curving surface with some mirroring. Palenque also has many different examples. You all can read this. Of course, we discussed lintel 25 at Yaxchilan, but there was a lot of stela and lintels commissioned by the ruler there. It was a Shield Jaguar or whoever else. That here we have Piedras Negras as well. So it looks like that whole area they were into interacting with the entities. Naranjo, Stela 22, 23, 29, Caracol, Stela 136, Tonina. Several of the stone monuments and panels include reverse glyphs. And Tonina is notable for its unusual textual arrangements in general. So here's some more at Calakmul, Dos Pilas Ahuateca. And in carved wood, we have a bunch of the lintels and the various temples, 1, 2, 3, and 4 at Tikal. And it's another example of where the organic calligraphic quality of the carving that allowed scribes more freedom with sign orientation than stone. Tikal area, other little sites also have carved wood that was probably mimicking those of Tikal. And here we have a list of some of the polychrome vases, of which I'm going to discuss a few of them. But there were many vases, especially a lot show up in Justin Kerr's database. The thank you, Justin. Here's the Fenton vase, where the polychrome vessels, especially in the classic period, are a rich source of mirrored glyphs, especially in the primary standard sequence, which is not featured here. Is that repetitive? Or geez, anyway. Here's K4010. Here's the shape of the vessel. And then two scribes. One of them wears the akum with brushes and a paint container. And the other is a supernatural. So of about 4010, instead of forcing every glyph to read identically around the circumference, the captions are oriented toward the individual they identify. So this glyph right here, you can see perhaps the date signature or whatever that is on the right-hand side. Marc Zender discusses the relationship between portrait and caption on this vessel, saying the individual in the forefront is identified by the glyphs in his face as being unique, a man, a human scribe. Behind the human scribe is a supernatural figure identified with symbols on the surface. Of his skin is glowing, angelic being who would have brought writing with him from the other world. He holds a brush outstretched in his right hand. That also, he holds an ink pot right here. They're both holding ink pots. And the hieroglyphs in front of his face let us know that he was a supernatural scribe, the patron of writing. So here's another one, 6341, and it's another palace scene. The reverse glyphs show up a lot in palace scenes, and the ruler is looking into a mirror, and warriors with shields here are looking upon the scene. So these glyphs behind him are in reverse. And here's another one. This is the shape of 511 from the Kerr database. It's the Princeton vase, very popular. It's the court of another world with God El and the twins here. As magicians, it's a supernatural palace. A masterpiece of Maya ceramic painting, some caption glyphs beside the figures or reversed inward towards the scene's central axis. So why it matters? Why it matters? The scene is organized like a palace audience, enthroned ruler, attendants, women, caption glyphs, courtly setting. Most classic Maya head glyphs normally face leftward toward the start of the text stream. On K511, some head variants in the caption text and speech-related text visibly face rightward or compositionally reverse. These are not just sloppy brushstrokes. Several appear intentionally oriented to interact with the figures in the speech flow. A particularly important area of this cluster of captured gifts is with the kneeling woman before God El. Researchers discussing sign 1086 on the Princeton vase, they specifically note unusual head variants rendered in the captions. K511 is one of the strongest and most discussed ceramic vases cases where these anomalies become visually obvious. And on K4113, a late classic vessel. So we've got a ruler, we've got Itzam, the patron of scribes, and we've got a dwarf attendant over here. The ruler is addressing the deity, and the accompanying glyphs are organized spatially around the participants, not purely according to linear writing direction. This is another example where portrait orientation governs the inscription placement. Oh, here we got the vase of 11 gods, and we've got 10 gods, and presided over by God El on the jaguar throne inside a mountain. excuse me. The deity portrays portraits, the deity portraits receive captions whose orientation follows the directions of these seated gods. The writing becomes subordinate to the iconography. Researchers discussing mirrored text frequently include these codex-style vases among ceramic examples of intentional directional reversal. And we've got the vase of the 11 gods here. Here we have the vase of the 7 gods. This is in the photo from Justin Kerr. And here we have this excellent illustration from Alex Krim. And the deities' captions are arranged to face the figures and it's frequently discussed in epigraphic literature. So this is probably the most famous ceramic example. And the vase is important enough that Justin Kerr Archives gives it its own feature page. Several of the deity named captions are rotated or mirrored so that each caption faces its associated god rather than following a continuous left to right narrative. Epigraphs interpret it as a deliberate visual convention of linking writing to the depicted supernatural individual. So another example, when Nicholas Helmuth saw my program announcement, he immediately emailed with a couple more examples on polychrome vases, and these are Nicholas Helmuth rollouts, not Justin Kerr rollouts. What is amazing to me is that when in Photoshop you digitally flip the rollout, each PSS glyph is precisely accurate. This scribe was a master. Another one, notice that the glyphs, especially in the head variants, are reversed. Here's a major dude facing right. And this is another rollout from Nicholas. So thank you, Nicholas. And I think we're getting towards the end here. But Mallory, this is from Mallory, her excellent treatise. Given the undeniable effect of this change in orientation on the monumental inscriptions and its viewer, it seems appropriate to begin with an analysis of the expressions and ramifications of the intentional reversal on the level of each text's most basic linguistic component, the individual hieroglyph. Even a cursory glance through the Maya hieroglyphic corpus reveals that many hieroglyphs are characterized by vertical, bilateral symmetry along a vertical axis, either in their external form, internal components, or both. Some hieroglyphs assume a different semantic or phonetic meaning when reversed, such as the rare head variant for the syllable wa, and the head variant na, that denotes a mother or feminine interbreeds. Such glyphs include both phonetic hieroglyphs like pa, lo, as well as logographs such as akbal and saknik. A few head variants are also vertically symmetrical. So these ones I'll show you. Here's a single, here's the doubled up version. Here's a variant of this doubled up version. The tendency towards orientation along a central vertical axis may be part of a broader Mesoamerican cultural preference, such as Carl Callaway observed that Teotihuacan writing tends to be composed in vertical columns oriented in the center of the surface on which they were inscribed. This apparent preference for the vertical bilateral symmetry in the glyphs may also be a learned trait that reflects the fact that vertical bilateral symmetry is particularly significant in human identification of objects and is also more easily recognizable by humans than horizontal and other forms. So evidence For the variability and orientation can be found in logographic hieroglyphs, including T168, one of the many logographs for a hall. And this orientation of aha is orientated differently in each glyph block. So such discrepancies occur between adjacent glyphs and indicate that the ancient Maya system allowed for considerable flexibility in the vertical orientation of individual hieroglyphs. Instead, the vertical arrangement of hieroglyphs with respect to one another, both within and between glyph blocks, is more essential to the reading and interpreting glyphic patterns. The variation possible in orientation of the individual hieroglyph would have allowed Maya monument makers the freedom to produce entire hieroglyphic passages in mirror image without necessarily changing the semantic or phonetic context of the text. They were more concerned with depicting the reverse relationship of the hieroglyphs to each other rather than necessarily reversing each hieroglyph individually when creating mirrored image monumental inscription. Danninger and Pearson, they found that the tendency to distinguish between two-dimensional right-left mirrored images is not inherent, but rather a learned reflex influenced in part by cultural factors, including literacy. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed my show. And I couldn't have done it without a little help from my friends. And thank you from Michael. Let me quit my sharing. Thank you, Jimena. Let me get my shoe back on. So are we back, Michael? You're muted.
Yes. Are there questions from anyone? Unmute yourself and ask Jim your question. Any questions?
Thank you, Kirsten. I can't believe nobody has any questions.
Any questions at all?
Yeah, Jim, I've got a comment. This idea of left-handedness is coming up again and again in different contexts in the inscriptions. I think that Barb has had some play with it of late. And I find it interesting that, when you look at yourself in a mirror and you're holding something in your right hand, you look at your reflected image back and it's in your left hand. And I don't know what the semiotics of left-handed is in Maya culture and speech, how it's related to thoughts and ideas and philosophies. But it's a really fascinating topic you presented, and yet we've yet to understand this idea of left-handedness and left-handed knowledge in Maya culture and inscriptions. So I thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't really fathom the whole meaning of it all either, but it would seem to me that they were more interested in, especially card monuments. They were wanting to convey whatever it was very explicitly. So it was probably done by right-handed artists who were doing the most of the work, carving and painting, not necessarily a left-handed sculptor or scribe. I think it was what the right-handers were doing to make it look left-handed was consciously, done, but it doesn't just because we see it nowadays and think, oh my gosh, maybe the person was a left-handed person. I don't think so. I think it was right-handed people or normal carvers who carved, like you mentioned then let's see if the scribe who did Yashilan Lento 25 also did everything else he did backwards. That would maybe be an example of, hey, if he was left-handed, or if he saw things in reverse, then he might be a left-handed person. But the fact that it's in a doorway, it was definitely a message to the entities coming through and entering a ritual, dark underworld space, that they were specifically, writing and carving in reverse.
Yeah, it's a real impenetrable mystery still, but it's great that you've gathered all of this in one place so that we can look at it and and contemplate it. So it's been great. It's been a great visit into a left-handed world.
All right. Well, thank you, Carl, for everything you helped me put together, and for even you know, pretty much making up the slide for me. Yeah.
And Vinny Stanzione had his hand up at one point.
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me? I'm here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Vinny.
Yeah. So, yeah, thanks a lot, Jim. I appreciate it. I mean, I think a lot about this. In the Popol Vuh, of course, Ishkik, she holds out her right hand. Hold out your right hand, says Hun Hunapu. And I will, leave. I'll leave you with the word. And so she enters the word. She enters the tradition by having the spittle enter into her right hand. And I always thought that was really interesting, this idea of right-handedness and left-handedness. But so that just something I was thinking about. But my question was, so Jim, do you think that the script is written for deities, for the Kabawil, to the deities, or who is the script written for? I know that sounds kind of naive, but I wonder.
May I first say, Vinny's going to be doing his own program for us about the Popol Vuh on December 14th. But I think it was more for the viewer to see that they are in the realm of deities. If you were in a room that was all curtained, and the curtains meant that you were in the clouds with the gods, when you were in that room and looking at the curtains, you would be in that realm, and your mind and thoughts would go to that level. So to see whether the royals or whoever was looking at the reverse glyphs could actually read them themselves, that's one thing. I think the artist would say, no, I've got it perfectly right. God L can read this, believe me.
Right.
That it was so much done on purpose that there's no ambiguity about it. And there's so many instances of where, it involves inner rooms. It involves rooms where rituals were being done, especially at night, and especially when they were dressed as God, impersonators. So to me, it was very much done on purpose, and it was for. If it wasn't for the gods to read, it was for the people reading them to feel like they were in the presence of the gods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. Right. Yeah, you have that. That's a participation mystique through the ritual and the myth coming together through the writing. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And the painting and the sculpting and
Right.
everything. Hey, Diane, how you doing?
I definitely, because I worked on the fish in hand. I think there is an important to an issue of what does left-handedness mean, and I don't mean whether the scribe was right or left-handed. I mean, what does in the culture, and I don't know why that hasn't been asked to a lot of indigenous Mayan who are keeping the tradition. What do you think about left hand? Because of course in the Western view, left hand is sinister, right hand, there's this connotation. That obviously wasn't the Mayan, but I don't know what the Mayans were. But I think it's clear that the fish in hand glyph had to be in a left hand
Right. Yeah.
because every other depiction shows it in the left hand. It's just that one occasion on the side, on the front of, on the facade of lintel 25, where everything else is reversed. Even God K's head, even Shield Jaguar's name, the glyphs are reversed. But on the front of that lintel, it appears again, but it's in the correct form. I mean, it's not mirror. But I don't know what. Yeah.
What do we think that the fish in hand means?
Well,
I mean, it's not like
it,
Jesus making a fish turn into 100 fish or something. What do you think it means?
I don't know. I have a hunch that when I did my paper on it, I called it part 1 because I was getting all the copies I could of the glyph itself, looking at where they were, what the grammar of its use was, everything where it appeared, and the context. And then part 2, and the attempt, and I got it wrong in my paper, but the attempt at a reading of it. And what I had in mind for part 2 was what's going on at the time that it's being used or in the scene it's depicting. What is important to the Maya that they conjure someone? Why are they conjuring the serpent, the vision serpent, the so-called vision serpent? Why did they have to talk to the vision or consult the vision serpent? And there was not enough work done at the time for me to try to figure that out. I wanted to know more about the dynastic changes for all of the sites. And now that a lot of that has been done, time has gone by and I've forgotten at least half of what I once knew about the glyphs. And of what I once knew about the glyphs, about half of that has been changed. So I have a long road to try to catch up. But I think it does have to do with the meaning of the grasp, of the getting hold of, the conjuring of it, but like the contacting, the bringing whoever it is that they're conjuring, bringing it to them, reaching out, but which is why the sock, but I don't know beyond that. And that's what I wanted to try to figure out by trying to understand the context in which they were doing any of this particular kind of conjuring. But I haven't done that work yet.
Yeah.
That's ahead of me. If I have time in the rest of my life.
Hello, everybody. How are you? This is Sylvia.
Hey, Sylvia, how are you doing?
Good. How are you? So, I do agree with her that it had to be someone that was left-handed, because in Cholula, anyone that's seen as a left-handed is seen as special, as someone that has some let's say not super abilities, but very important, very like you see somebody that's left-handed, you're like, oh wow, like you're it seemed very special. And I know that in Cholula, we I'm Olmeca, Xicalanga, and we are Mayans migrated there, but I just don't know. They were the Choctal Maya, but I just don't know if these Mayans were my ancestors were the classical Mayans that migrated to central Mexico. So that's what I'm trying to lost there to but yes, culturally in Cholula, someone that is left-handed is very special till today. And I don't know if it has to do with what you went through, as it's just seen as that way, because we lost a lot of information and knowledge. And that was just a little something I wanted to add there.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Sim has his hand up.
Sim? Yeah. What do you, Sim? if you were going to have a different question, but what do you think the fish in hand means?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Very, very hard. Sorry. It does relate to one of my questions. I just wanted to point out, I think that Eric Bolt wrote a paper way back, hand glyphs or something, and he
Mhm.
does take the trouble in his work to always say whether it's a left hand or a right hand.
Yeah.
So I think that might be quite a useful place to have a look as well. Most people, I think, don't pay any attention, so that's quite worthwhile.
I would like to comment briefly on just the distribution of right hands versus left hands in the script, because the issue did come up in connection with Copan Stela E, which I have just finished together with Peter Biro and Michael Rofe, a monster paper which is now in press. And we've been working on it since 2018. But toward the end of the text, and the text for the most part has been just a headbanger for everybody from Morley on. I mean, Morley specifically said, "I give up," and Linda Sheely specifically said, "I give up." And of course, that's that's kind of inspiring for those of us who really want to crack undeciphered signs. But Pete Pierrot is the one who dragged me kicking and screaming into it. But toward the end of the text, there is a passage that refers to left-handed knowledge, and as far as I'm aware, it is the only place in the entire corpus where that particular phrase appears. Whereas left hand does appear in a few other places, but it's rare. And in terms of the distribution of left hand versus right hand signs or hands in the script, there's an overwhelmingly predominant abundance of right hand signs and right hands versus left hands. It's probably somewhere in the range of 90 to 10 or 95 to 5. I can't tell you, but I do have some data on it that's saved. So actual depictions of left hands are extremely rare in the script. But in the case of this closing passage of Copan Stela E, it is absolutely a left hand, and it is written in a kind of abbreviated form because the left hand logogram has a specific kind of structure to it. It almost looks like a ma superfix with another piece in the middle and then the hand underneath it. And it reads tzeh, which in fact in the languages means left hand. But in this case, it's collapsed such that you only see the ma and then you see the left hand. And I think for a lot of people, other people besides me, thinking that it's got to be a negation of some sort. So I beat my head on the possible semantics of a negated sentence here and got absolutely nowhere. I mean, I took it as far as I think anyone could possibly take it and gave up. And then I realized, no, this has got to be actually a reduced form of the word that means left hand. And it's followed by the word na, which is spelled na-ah. And there's only two words in the whole linguistic inventory that not can mean. One of them is mother, and the other one is knowledge. And I gave a little bit of due attention to mother, decided, nope, that can't possibly be it. And so this actually this opened a kind of secret door, a secret passageway of left-handed knowledge into the rest of the text, which refers to the narrow place of Yashkuk-Mo, and the narrow place itself is a new decipherment. But in my conception of what narrow places are, they are actually underground. They are caves.
Yeah.
And this particular cave, we think we know exactly where it is in the Copan Valley. And that's a whole nother story in itself.
Wow.
So we think I actually identified a location in the Copan Valley where this very arcane ritual took place that's referenced on the monument.
There's caves up in the mountains above looking down on the Copan Valley too, right?
Not very many. No, first of all,
Really?
there's hardly any limestone. There's a little bit of limestone, but most of what you have there is tephrite, which is a volcanic extrusive stone, which is what the monuments are carved from.
Hmm.
But there's a thin layer of limestone at a certain horizon, a certain level in the Copan Valley, and wherever there are streams flowing into the Copan Valley, and there are multiple streams, there are caves, or at least the possibility of developing caves, but there honestly aren't very many.
Hmm. Well, what
It's
do you
not,
think about Vincent's comment, left as south, right as north, as one standing in the east, looking west at sunrise?
well, wait a minute. Looking west at sunrise? Looking
Yeah.
east at sunrise.
One standing in the east, looking west.
Okay, standing in the east looking west,
Right.
your left hand will be in the south, your right hand will be in the north.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you're doing this at sunrise. You're facing the direction of sunset, but you're doing this at sunrise.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Tell us more about that.
Well, I mean, that's the way that contemporary Mayas are looking at the south. They're looking at the south as left and the north as right. Um, but it's actually quite strange because that's the reverse of how one actually does ceremony. Because that one always is doing your fire ceremony looking east, so that the left is to the north, and the right hand is to the south. It's kind of a reversal. So I know there's something really interesting going on with this idea of, north and south and reversing, and the direction that you're taking, and how you're facing the ceremony, how you're facing your fire, and how you're facing sunrise and maybe sunset. So I don't know. It's always puzzled me. Here, anything that's left-handed or is kind of unintelligent, not smart. Everything that's right is thought of as being intelligent. Emosh, being kind of not kind of watery, and not strong like the clay figurines, like the clay beings. Made the man made of mud, so to speak. In the Popol Vuh, he's just very soft. He absorbs the water. So the idea that
You're not strong.
he's not a hard being, and anyway, that kind of has to do with being not smart. I don't want to say stupid, but it's just not being smart, and that's really what people talk about as being emosh, something wet and unintelligent. Which is kind of, I don't know. It seems like it's very kind of Catholic in the sense that it comes from a sinister left-handedness, but I don't know. Yeah.
What do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
Also, we can't forget that compositionally, when the Maya lay out a history or a mythic history, at the start of the text on the left-hand side is when they have the recalling of all the mythic activities. So all the pre-era activities are happening on the left side. So like when you just look at the cross group and the sanctuary panels, all the myth is on the left because it happens in early history, right? Or the mythic history happens on the left, and then you proceed toward the right, toward the current day. So that is a very strong, compositionally, that is a very strong idea that the myth is evolving out of the left side of the composition, and the right side of the composition is the current historical period. So I think that idea is fully ensconced in Maya writing and the way in which they lay out an inscription.
Sim, did you have more to say, Sim?
Just a little bit. I just checked the LMGG. Can you put that on the screen? Have you got it started up?
No.
Otherwise, I could try.
Well, see,
I'm
right
not-
now we're looking at Jim's screen. So Jim, you'll have to unshare so that Sim can share.
Thank you. How do I
Okay,
do
you unshared. Now, does Sim have sharing
it? I think I
permission?
can.
It was on multiple participants, but
There we go.
Oh, here
There
we
we
go. Here we go. It's
Can
coming
you
up.
see my screen?
Not
yep,
yet,
it's
but
coming.
here it
All
is.
right.
Got it.
All
Now, I
right.
just want to point out that this is obviously very wrong. I just
Yeah.
had a look, and because it's very bad, it's not very complete, not at all complete. It just has the what I call the pedagogical examples first, and then later, as time goes on, I see more and more interesting real life examples from papers or from my collections, and I put them at the bottom. So you can see that this is very embryonic still, and it only has in the top two rows only the pedagogical examples. And so we've got Kettner and Helmke, Kettner and Lacadena,
No.
Benin, the Bratislava manual, and then a couple from John Montgomery. And the only real one I've got here is from Eric Boat, a paper here. What's it called? The Human Hand. Oh, that's the one I referred to. The Human Hand in Classic Maya Hieroglyphic Writing. And the comment I made here, based on the evidence I had, is that the example on the left is one of the earliest examples known, the Perlman shell. Okay, that's just K519. That's okay, but this is the comment I wanted to focus people's attention on. The left hand grasping a fish, viewed looking at the palm. Yeah, of course, I always say whether it's looking at, left hand or right hand also depends on whether you're looking at the palm or whether you're looking at the back of the hand. So it's viewed looking at the palm. KNH is the only source to show a right hand could be
No.
a mirror inscription.
No,
So you can
no,
see all to the left.
I want to say something about that. I was planning to contact you after your talk. That was
Sure.
that was from the 2017 version of their book, of their guide. They took that out, and
Yes.
that's supposed to be lintel 25, but they got their image reversed when they published it. They're now using a different example of the fish in hand in the 2020 edition. So when they
Great.
published that in the 2017 edition, they for whatever reason inadvertently switched the real image.
Okay. Okay. That
So
could
it's
be very
always a
much
left
related
hand.
to what Jim said earlier, that a lot of these drawings, if you look at them when when the original artist made them, they are mirrored, but by the time they get published
Yeah,
for
they
a
get
sort of
switched.
analysis, which is very, very wrong, I feel. But okay. Well, thanks very much. As I said, these are only the pedagogical examples, and again, now apparently from a wrong edition. But this is a perfect example of me. I'd be able to use MHD to just put in the code for Suck and actually get all the hits and then go through. What I often do is just walk through them all with a sort of a tally thing. And every time I see a left hand, I do one tally. And every time I do a right hand, I do another tally. And when I finish, then I'll have a nice little statistics for MHD
Yeah.
statistics at this particular time. And these are all the left hands and these are all the right hands. And that way we'll be able to actually see, modulo, of course, the fact that some of those drawings might actually have been reversed. But we'll get a much better indication of whether they are left or right. But
That would be
it's
great.
very
That would be great.
striking that for all the pedagogical examples I had here, the left hand completely predominates. And in fact, Kettner and Helmke are the only people who managed to do a right hand.
I have 57 examples of the fish in hand. They're all left hand.
Left hand, okay. Wow. So
Of the
maybe
fish
that's,
in hand. Of the fish in hand. I'm talking about the fish in hand. It's always left.
yeah, sure.
Of
I understand.
of the at the time I did my paper, the known 57 examples of it. There may be.
Oh, great. All right, I will actually be able to do the full MHD dump before the creation of MHD, which has only been 2 years old, 2 or 3 years old. They were almost so difficult to find all the examples, right? So, yeah, thanks very much. I only had two very small comments, so peripheral that I almost daren't mention them. One is a bit of a comical one. John Porter, I don't know you, but I don't know whether how deliberate it was that for some of the presentation, Jim's presentation, your icon was upside down. And when I saw that, I thought, I'm wondering whether I think John's gone, right?
Is that
No
John,
chance to actually ask.
John Daigle?
John Porter.
Porter.
Can you hear me? I am John Porter.
Cool, lovely. That was
I had
actually
my iPad upside down. And I just noticed that.
okay. When I saw it, I just wondered, oh, is this something just to
No, I'm not
support?
clever.
All right.
And my last comment is completely trivial, or very, very peripheral to Jim's theme. I've always thought, I only came across Maya mirrors very late in life, of course, but the ancient Chinese had bronze mirrors, polished bronze mirrors for a very long time, in the BCs. I'm not good at Chinese history, so I have no idea. Probably about 500 BC or something. And when I came across Maya bronze mirrors as well, I believe they're bronze, the same thought occurred to me again. In modern life, we're so used to these mercury backed mirrors with glass, and they just give a complete, very easy image, or a completely accurate image. And so when we look into the rear view vision mirror, we actually can read ambulance. But it's a completely different idea when we think of these ancient people with their mirrors, because however nicely you polish bronze, I can't see that it would even give anything close to an easy to read image.
Right. That's what I think too.
I want to make, like I have no idea. I wish that some archaeologists or scientists would actually try and look at the quality of the bronze and actually try and polish that bronze to the level that the technology would have enabled at the time, which of course is even less than what we could do with bronze now, and then just let other archaeologists see what those people at the time would have been able to see with their bronze. I mean, it's just a slight shift in psychology or setting, but it's a thought that has always struck me for years and years and years. So I just want to put that out there.
Well, are you asking about the quality of a pyrite mirror under the right circumstances? Because
Correct.
I've had a little bit of experience with those. I've actually found one archaeologically in a cave. It was in pieces, but the very thin wafers of pyrite, they're cut so that they can be assembled as a mosaic into either a square or a disc shape. And if you have all the pieces and you polish that surface after you've glued them all together, you can get a pretty good shine, but you've got to look at it under the right circumstances. And I think in the dark would probably be the beginning of the right circumstances. And probably also under the influence of certain psychedelic substances would be an additional right circumstance. But I could definitely see that they're definitely reflective. They're sufficiently reflective that you could definitely look at them and see a good reversed image in them, especially if you had the whole thing. So,
right. So in fact, most of these bronze mirrors that we see painted on vases, they would have been pyrite mirrors and not bronze mirrors.
Yeah, we're talking about the Maya, right? Not bronze.
Yeah.
We're talking about pyrite, right? Pyrite and hematite. Primarily pyrite. I think pyrite is amenable to being sliced in very thin wafers because it forms naturally in cubes. Its crystal structure is cubic, if I recall correctly, and you can slice very thin wafers if you've got the technology to do it. And clearly they did. And then you can assemble those little wafers into pieces, lop off corners and so on, but fit them all very nicely together on a surface. And the surfaces they were either circular or they were square, and then they were worn as pectorals. But not everybody had these things. These were pretty rare objects, and I do have I've encountered them in caves more than once, but on one occasion the pieces were in such good condition that I could see right away how reflective they still were.
Wow. Well, thanks very much, Bob, because that's corrected one huge misapprehension I've had since I started learning Maya, because I just carried my Chinese sort of background through, and I just thought they were all bronze, because I knew that the Maya did have some bronze, right? So that's one big thing.
You mean
But the other
Tumbaga?
thing is,
I mean Tumbaga. I mean they did. I think in the post classic, to a certain extent. I can't. I'm kind of clueless about a lot of things what they had in the post classic, but in fact, no, these mirrors were pyrite, and I think the Olmec, in fact, made a whole single stone with a concave image, and a concave shaped stone can actually, on its own, invert an image if it's carved correctly. So
What
you can just
what makes you think that it was they'd be better in darkness or in low light situations?
just because those are the situations in which I actually got to experiment with them.
Oh, okay.
There's just too much stray brilliance when you take them outdoors. You got them in a cave and you've got a carbide lamp kind of off in a corner somewhere, giving you just enough illumination of your own face. You can look at these little pieces and see quite a bit in a single little piece that's, no bigger than that.
Wow.
That's all I got to look at was single pieces like that, but they're very reflective.
makes a lot of sense to me, Jim, because like if you had a torch, if you're outside, then the sun and as Bob says, all the background stuff would be going onto the mirror as well. But if you're in a cave and you have a torch just in your own hand, the main light would be everything would be dark and then it would go onto your face, and then that face would be on the mirror. So that would actually really so two comments. Thank you so much, Bob. I think just you bringing up the fact that it was in a cave, I think is very helpful because we're talking about all these rituals and then with drugs on top, and then you're in this cave, and that mirror works much better than everywhere else. It all fits together so well, I think, the ritualizing of mirror images. And Jim, just want to apologize to you because the pyrites word was mentioned several times in your talk, and it just went shoop. When you've got a preconception, you just hear something and then it just goes bloop. So yeah, I've learned so much, and if I hadn't come and just watched the recording, none of this would have ever happened. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sim. Does anybody got anything else, or we're getting past 2 hours here? What should we do? There's Arnold Angie is hanging on, and him and I we emailing back and forth, and he was hoping that I would reveal some of the mystical side of my some of my experiences where I definitely had very conscious, aware experiences with the various entities or whoever, especially whoever guards the portal or the pyramid above the pyramid of Kukulkan there at Chichen Itza. But on advice of another friend, I decided to take all that out of there because people aren't going to accept it if it's not a part of their own perception. They're not going to perceive the importance of my experiences. But that's one of the reasons why I feel comfortable mentioning portals. Feel comfortable mentioning the deities being able to interact with, and even the modern Mayas, because even in a ceremony with the modern Maya, the deities showed their faces, and our Maya spiritual elder was crying like a baby because the Maya gods had shown their faces. So sorry, Arnold, but I'll have to wait. You'll have to read my book when I get that together in 10 years.
All right, so are there any more questions? It's getting late. So Jim, I want to thank you for an amazing presentation. It was really, really a knockout. And we're going to see you all in a couple of weeks. We're going to have two of these a month now, aren't we, Jim?
Yep. Barb's coming up real soon.
Right?
I'm not next. I think, isn't it John Justison
Oh yeah, John
next?
Justinson is next with the Zapotec writing, and then Bob and Barb and Peter. And Barb, how'd you pronounce his last name?
Biro. I
Biro.
assume, I mean, it's got an accent mark on it. I assume that means it's Biro.
I always
Um,
say Biro. Biro.
well, I
Biro.
think he'll answer, I think he'll answer to pretty much anything, but you can ask him.
Biro.
I
Yeah.
mean, I assume that he's going to attend. He's told me he will have to take off work that next day because he's 7 hours ahead in
Right.
Budapest. Um, but I think he wants very much to attend, and I certainly want him to attend.
Yeah, I
He has
told
the
him when we do his presentation next year that I'll put the time at 4 p.m. ET,
hmm
and that'll make it. There might not be that many, participants, but at least it'll give him a chance to.
Well, I think he's willing if as long as there's enough advance notice to take off work, so that he can get a lot of attendees. You just have to
Yeah,
ask him. But I think that's what he tends to do when we present is to take off work the next day.
yeah.
And so, yeah, we're hard at work. I'll let you know, but we're getting the images together. I've already sent you a draft of
And he's back
the
now.
text.
It's
He's back now.
past the
Yeah,
23rd.
he's
Yeah.
back. He's back from his trip, and so yeah, we're putting the images together. How
All
many
right.
images can we give you? Will you take 30?
Ah, it would be the it would
20?
make it would make for a Barb and Peter Peter issue. But I only need an article that, sometime of the now I'm doing 24 pages. The longest articles have always been 10, 11 pages at the most,
Okay, well,
but figure at
um,
least one image a page.
okay,
Unless
well,
unless there's
I'll
not that much text and you're more interested in the images, then I'll have two images a page or
no,
whatever.
there's a quite well we've just now hit about 3,000 words.
Oh, and you're
However,
eager to
however many pages that is.
when you're eager to present something, it's hard to hold back, I think.
Yeah,
It is. Well, we are very eager. We think we've
Yeah,
got something pretty
yeah,
exciting to talk about.
yeah.
Um, and there's a lot of images which would be pertinent, but we can, I'll talk it over with Peter. If we can get 2 images a page, I don't know how many pages is 3,000 words.
it depends. It depends. I
Okay.
mean, somebody's article Sim, you said yours was like 4,000 words,
Yeah, I think so. It was. Yeah.
and that had a lot of images or big images that were,
Big images. We could have a few big images. We mostly got little bitty tiny images.
yeah,
So you could probably cram a bunch of those onto a page.
yeah, that's no problem. Yeah, if they're like, glyphs from here, there, or
Yeah,
something, yeah,
and
they
they're
can be
individual signs is what most of them are.
6 or 8 of those to a page. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
like at least a column of text and then images to the right, but
Okay.
I
Well,
think I'll work with whatever, and it's going to be such an important paper that I'm willing to make the whole issue be Barb and Peter and upcoming events.
well, no, but there another article that's going into that issue as well? Didn't you
No,
mention? Oh, there
no, I'm
isn't.
doing 2 issues a month now.
I see. So there's only one
So
basic.
each issue and each cover can
Okay.
focus on just one person's presentation. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Just before everyone disappears, I just had one last question. I'm sorry. I don't recognize people's voices well enough, and I had my full screen, so I couldn't see people's faces. Was it you, Diane, who said that you had 59
Yeah,
something?
57.
57. All right,
Yes,
thanks. Yeah,
yes, it
I,
was.
I heard a voice, a disembodied
Right.
voice. I think that's Diane, but I'm not
I'm
sure.
coming to
Thanks
you
so
from the spirit world. I was conjured to you.
Yes.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
And
Well,
I'll write to you or something. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
yeah, while we're talking about the fish in hand, then I remember from a while ago when I looked into it that First of all, there is a Yucatec word which does mean to conjure clouds or conjure weather,
Mhm.
which is tsak, and I'm assuming you
Yeah.
know that. But I also know that there is a word tsak, but I'm not sure what language it's in. It may be a Cholan language for a type of freshwater cichlid.
Yes.
And I should know
Yes.
the common name for that fish. Can you tell me more about that?
No, I can't tell you more about the fish, but a friend of mine, when I was first working on my paper, on the fish in hand back in the 80s, another fellow student of the Mayan glyphs who also had tropical fish said, you know what, because of the way the head is formed, the top of the head, there's that on some of the examples of the fish and head glyph, there's a bulbous part of the what would be the forehead of the fish. And she said that's something that's typical of some species of cichlid. And and there are some species of cichlid who live in that, Mexico and Central America. So I contacted, and she said one of the things that's interesting about the cichlid, but it turns out it's not in that Central American group. One of the things that's interesting is that both parents raise the young. It's not just the mother who tends the eggs. But that was just a comment of hers. But I contacted the American Cichlid Society. I contacted some specialty fish group of tropical fish, and I showed them a lot of examples of the fish where you could see this bulbous part on the forehead of the fish. And I said, if you were just to guess if this were a species of fish, and I showed them a number of examples of the fish and head, not just only the bulbous ones. I said, what would you take this fish to be? Would you be able to identify it? They saw all the examples of the one with the bulbous head, and yet they said, well, we're sorry, but we think it's just a generic fish. I think they're wrong. I think it may be related to the cichlids still, but that was the response they gave me.
Well,
So.
I think I'm just not right now. I'm just drawing a blank on the Spanish word because the Belizean Creole word for that very fish, and that very fish is extremely common in the streams of Belize and the streams of Guatemala. I mean, everywhere, if you get to be into the outback where there is fresh water running, you can catch those fish very, very easily and cook them up for dinner. But in Belizean Creole, they're called tuba. And it took me a little while to figure out exactly what that stands for, but that particular species has got two dark stripes across the top of the head that you see very clearly when you're looking down on them. And the word is actually two bars. But they say tuba, which is two bars in Belizean Creole.
There are a few examples of the fish in hand glyph depicted where there is some kind of marking on. It looks to be some kind of marking on the fish, but I couldn't get anybody to identify what they thought that fish might be. But I think it's a specific fish.
I think it is too. No, I think the tuba is a cichlid. That I know. What I'm not remembering is now what his Spanish word is, which would lead me to its its Latin name and so on. This is all kind of dust covered for me. But in fact, the syllabogram for ka is a fish, and sometimes that ka fish is the tuba fish with two bars on it.
Now this is really, really interesting, Barb, because at Palenque there's new research in a new paper that's been recently published. The archaeologists at Palenque have found fish traps down further in the Otulum stream. And they've identified the fish that were being captured there. And those fish end up in cash deposits in the Palenque temples. So they may between, the fisheries further down in the valley and the deposition of these fish ritually. And I believe, if memory serves me correct, that it's this two-bar, the two-bar fish. The same two-bar fish that, which they actually have a species name for. It's related to chalk fishing on the Tikal bones. So very, very interesting. And early on, I remember Linda Sheely saying that the fish in hand is related to spines, that were taken off the fish to use as bloodletting instruments, so the conjuring in the blood. But that was a very popular idea back then. But I'll get you this paper that's just fascinating about, we have this context now of the fishes being used ritually and being found in these fish traps at Palenque. So yeah, it's fascinating.
Can
No,
y'all?
I'll just say one more time that particular species of cichlid is overwhelmingly the most common small freshwater fish that you will see in all these streams.
Can you
throughout.
spell cichlid for me?
Cichlid.
Okay, thank you. And I'll reference and see if that's in the paper itself, and I'll send it to you.
Can you all look at Adriana's photos at the bottom of the chat, or is that the kind of fish you're talking about?
Let's go in there and look. That doesn't really look like it. That fish is a little too elongated. These guys are, and the stripes on them, there's really only these two dark stripes across the top of the head, and the rest of the fish is kind of yellowish or silver. So this one looks like some other kind of fish. Let me open this up. Yeah, no, the tuba only has two dark bars on the top of it, and the rest of it is just kind of silverish, goldish. So these are not them.
All right.
An amazing fact here, a whole bunch of people are entering the waiting room and coming into the talk at 9:21 p.m.
Right now?
Yes.
Are they supposed to be here?
Well, I guess they know what's going on.
You sure they're supposed to be here?
Let's not admit. They'll get the recording. Don't let them in.
Sometimes if you open the door to people that aren't supposed to be here, they do weird things to the images. We've had that happen before.
That's
Yeah,
true.
somebody will share the link on what is it? What app?
WhatsApp.
No, not WhatsApp. What's the other one? Anyway, I've had to one time Michael Smith shared his program link to his family and friends, but because he did, there's a way that when there's an open Zoom, you can go through that app and ask what Zooms are open now, and it'll say, "Hey, this one," and they'll join it, and there'll be Zoom bombers. But it's an easy.
I'm getting a bunch of apologies from them saying it's a time zone problem,
right?
And they're apologizing for coming in so late. So I think it's all right.
Yeah, these are good people.
Are they Jesus? Is it Jesus and
Catherine Knuckles, Margaret Arvey? Time difference. Well, you can let them in. We're just chewing the fat anyway. There are two-barred rabbitfish.
There's a two-bar.
Those bars look a little bit too dramatic for this little guy. I can't be absolutely certain. Is that thing a cichlid? That two-barred rabbitfish? And is it common? Is it common in the streams of Belize and Guatemala and southern Mexico?
Right.
It doesn't look quite right. Now, what I'm missing right now is the Spanish word, which would take me to the Latin term, which, if I could get there, I could go find it online and post it. But I'm not remembering the Spanish word.
With reference to your other meaning, you said "suck" also means conjure, right? In Yucatec.
In Yucatec, it means to conjure. I just looked it up just a little bit ago. It's conjurar nublados, to conjure clouds, basically to call clouds to make rain. But
okay, great.
It's specifically for conjuring clouds, but in one language or another, again, I'm fuzzy on this. It does refer to that particular little fish.
Oh, okay. I
It's
just
the
wanted to
name for
point
that
out
fish.
Right. I put it into the chat. There's that tiny little black and white thing in between all the nice fishes. If you go to MHD and go to their actual dictionary, the catalog itself, and look up Tsak, you'll find that there's a tab called lexical. And this is one of the huge things, how thorough they are. Um, it shows 9 Mayan languages, of which the first one they give is Yucatec. But PRC, CHN, CHR, TZO, TZE,
Yeah, they all,
QAN,
all have to do with grabbing
and they're
and catching.
all sucks. Yeah, but unfortunately, everything is in Spanish, and I don't speak any Spanish. But
Yeah, those agarrar, sacar, alcanzar, manojear. These are all having to do with grabbing, grasping, and basic going after things, which is you could say semantically related to conjuring. But
Mhm.
I was hoping we'd see the name of this fish in there
yeah,
somewhere.
no.
Well,
I just-
I
Yeah.
was going to say that in Quiche, you hear sock a lot, particularly when they're in the underworld playing ball with the, hun kame, bakub kame playing ball with huna punch balanke. They're always throwing down the ball. So the sakla kick or shitsakru cha, they threw down the ball.
Uh-huh.
So I was wondering if that sock, it has to do with throwing down in a sense of like conquering or throwing, or throwing in the ball, throwing the ball into play. I don't know. Are there any references to that?
No, not in the lowland languages that I know of. I think
Okay.
it's just happens to be a same sounding word with a very different meaning and not cognate.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Almost the opposite meaning, right? Grasping versus throwing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jim, your host is going to have to leave, so I'm
Okay.
going to say goodbye to everybody.
Already. Well, everybody, thank you for attending.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much. Thanks,
Thank you
Jim.
very
Thank
much,
you.
Jim. This is
Jen's
wonderful.
asking, is it Mohara? No.
Mohara. That sounds
No.
that's Mohara. Let's look up Mohara in English. Is Mohara? It could be Mohara.
But
Yeah,
Mohara
very
is
common fish.
when I looked up Spanish word for cichlid just now on my computer, they gave ciclida or pez ciclado or Mohara is
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
well, it may be the Mohara.
Mhm.
And so the question is, the Mohara the same as the tuba?
Right.
The tuba is what I first learned, and that's what's in my head.
Yeah.
Even though I speak Spanish well, it's like, I haven't got that word clearly in my mind. It's always the tuba wherever I see it.
And that's
But
from how do you pronounce his name? Jens. I mean, I get his posts of where he's working on artwork all the time. It's beautiful.
whose name?
The one that's at the end of the chat.
Jens. Oh, Jens Rohark.
Lacambalam.
He's saying no es Mohara, and in fact, sí es Mohara. Exactamente es Mohara. Yeah, that's the one.
I think Mohara is a
Cichlid.
cichlid.
There we are. So we're getting close. So the Mohara is the tuba. That's the British, or excuse me, that's the Belizean Creole word for it,
Yeah.
which is 2 bars, because it has two
Yeah.
little black
Two bars.
bars across the top of the head.
Yeah,
And you
I'll
can
come
see-
up with there's at least a glyphic example where that marking is shown. I'll see if I can come up with it.
Well, you see it in the syllabogram ka, especially when you see them on the ceramics, where they use the ka syllabogram, not to mean fish, but to spell the sound ka. Often that syllabogram will have those 2 little bars on it.
And Diane,
Yep.
we're expecting a little article about all this recent research for the November Aztlander.
The second part of my talk would take an enormous amount of research, an enormous amount, because one of the problems, and I know this is a trap, when you have a hunch about something and then you set out to do the research, and you're so tempted to find the things that fit your hunch.
Yeah.
And it's and you don't want to let go of your hunch. So I know that's a trap. So I have to be very, very careful and really do the research well so that I don't fall into my own trap. But also one of the problems I said when my paper was published in the Sixth Mesa Redonda thing, I did the paper and I had 2 possible readings for that glyph. Zak and Zaak, with a glottal stop. And I found really compelling stuff for both possibilities. And I ran the paper by Nick Hopkins, and he said, well, it cannot be both, because the Maya, although they loved punning, they never punned across that boundary between glottal stop and no glottal stop. So you're going to have to pick one or the other. And also for time, for the presentation, and for the size that we were allowed to present, I had to pick one of them.
Huh.
And unfortunately, of the two that I had done a lot of research on, unfortunately, I picked the wrong one.
Oh,
I presented the argument for Tzak, with the glottal stop. But anyway, and then my paper was mispublished. One of my major tables was omitted from the publication, and the caption that was supposed to be it was put into the caption for one of the others that was published. So it was just an unfortunate situation. But anyway, I do want to get back to doing research.
well, thank you, Diane. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Barb. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jim.
All righty.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Great talk.
Great evening.
Thank you, Sim.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you all for attending. And thanks for watching this Aztlander presentation. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. To subscribe to free monthly issues of the Aztlander, Voice of the Ancient Americas e-magazine, contact your host, Jim Reed, at jimreedmaya@gmail.com. Take care.